My name is Avery Grant. I'm 34 years old, and on Christmas morning I watched my parents hand my sister the keys to a brand new white BMW while I unwrapped a plastic piggy bank worth $2. The smell of pine and perfume mixed with the sound of Kayla squealing. My father called her our shining star. My mother said I was so practical. I smiled, but my hands were shaking. When I placed that toy pig on the table, it sounded exactly like what it was empty. But what they didn't know was that I was done being silent. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from. And hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by family, the kind of betrayal that doesn't leave bruises, just a quiet ache that never really fades. Because this story isn't about anger. It's about what happens when silence finally decides to speak. I grew up in Salem, Oregon, in a house that always smelled faintly of lemon polish and favoritism. My sister Kayla and I shared a hallway, but not the same childhood. She was the sunshine child, gold hair, easy laughter, glitter on her sneakers. I was the quiet one, the girl who fixed things when they broke, who never asked for help because asking meant hearing. "You're fine, Avery. You're the strong one." I remember one summer afternoon when I was 8 and Kayla was 5. Mom threw her a princess party with real ponies grazing in the yard. Pink balloons shimmered against the sky, and a local teen dressed as Cinderella posed for photos. When my birthday came 2 months later, Mom baked a sheet cake from a grocery mix and invited 2 of my classmates. The candles dripped wax faster than I could make a wish. "We're keeping it simple this year," she said, smoothing my hair. "You're not the type who needs a big fuss." I smiled, but something hollowed inside me that day. At 13, I learned what invisibility felt like. I brought home a trophy from the regional science fair, my first real win. My teacher said my bridge design could support 50 pounds more than anyone else's. Dad looked up from his newspaper long enough to say, "That's great, kiddo," before turning to Kayla. "Did you finish your dance audition video?" She twirled for him right there in the living room, and he applauded like she'd cured cancer. I clutched my trophy tighter. The metal was cold, almost sharp. In high school, things got worse because that's when Kayla discovered her talent for drama, both the stage kind and the household kind. She'd cry over nothing, and Mom would rush to her side with tissues and soothing words. "She feels so deeply," Mom said. "You should try to be more like her." I did try once. I cried after getting an A- in calculus, hoping they'd see I wasn't made of stone. Dad chuckled. "You? Crying over an A-? That's ridiculous." I never tried again. By college, the pattern had hardened like concrete. When I got my acceptance letter from Oregon State for engineering, Dad said, "Smart move, stable career." When Kayla got into some arts program in Los Angeles, Mom said, "She's brave for chasing her dreams." Stable versus brave. Practical versus passionate. I didn't know it then, but that comparison would haunt me for decades. Money was another quiet war. I worked at the campus bookstore 20 hours a week and $8 ramen. Kayla posted photos from Paris and Rome captioned, "Finding inspiration." When I asked Mom how she could afford it, she said, "Your sister needs experiences. You have discipline." Discipline didn't buy plane tickets. After graduation, I landed a job as a junior structural engineer in Seattle. I sent part of my paycheck home to help with bills. A year later, I learned Dad had used that money to pay for Kayla's failed design startup. "We thought she needed one more chance," Mom told me. "You always land on your feet." I swallowed the betrayal like bad coffee, bitter and burning. Still, I kept giving. I paid for Christmas gifts that looked generous, but were really peace offerings: an expensive watch for Dad, a silk scarf for Mom, art supplies for Kayla. I wanted them to see me, to notice. But attention in my family worked like sunlight. It only reached where Kayla stood. I didn't know it back then, but every year so responsible was just another brick in the wall they built around me. Responsibility became my cage. That pattern lasted 34 years. Until the morning I unwrapped that piggy bank, and something inside me finally cracked. The morning after that Christmas humiliation, I packed the car I'd paid off myself, my old silver Toyota, paint faded, engine steady like an old friend, and drove north through the storm. The windshield wipers squealed against the snow, each sweep matching the rhythm of my heartbeat. I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't stay. 7 hours later, I stopped at a diner somewhere near the Oregon-California border. The place smelled like burnt coffee and bacon grease, the kind of comfort only the lonely understand. The waitress, name tag reading Lori May, poured me a refill before I even asked. She looked at my red eyes and said, "Family trouble?" I nodded. "Blood makes you related," she told me, voice gravelly from years of smoke. "Love and respect make you family." I didn't realize it yet, but that sentence would become the blueprint for the life I built after. When I reached San Francisco, my friend Naomi Brooks opened her apartment door before I even knocked. She didn't ask questions, just hugged me tight and said, "You're safe now." She had been my college roommate, the one person who'd seen how the Grants operated. The first week I slept 12 hours a day, waking up in panic, half expecting my father's voice at the door demanding explanations. Naomi helped me find a small apartment in the Mission District, 650 square feet of cracked hardwood and stubborn windows. But when the afternoon light poured through those west-facing panes, the room felt alive. It was the first space in my adult life that belonged entirely to me. I bought a cheap futon, a lamp, and a ceramic mug that read engineer because miracle worker isn't an official title. At work, I requested a transfer to the San Francisco office. My new boss, Mr. Caldwell, didn't care about my family drama, only my results. Within months, I was assigned to the Richardson Tower project, a building designed to withstand earthquakes. I liked the symbolism, stability in chaos. Still, even new walls can echo old ghosts. Every Sunday morning, my phone would buzz with missed calls from home. First worry, then guilt, then anger. "You're punishing your mother," Dad said in one voicemail. "You're breaking her heart." Another message came from Kayla. "Mom's blood pressure is through the roof. Are you happy now?" I saved those messages not to listen, but to remind myself what manipulation sounded like. Therapy with Dr. Miriam Cho started by accident. Naomi booked the first session behind my back, told me it was a work debrief. Dr. Cho's office smelled of lemon polish and paper, oddly comforting. She listened as I unraveled decades of emotional budgeting, how love in my family came with receipts. "You were parentified," she said softly. "You were taught that stability was your role, not your right." That word parentified sat heavy in my chest. For the first time, I realized my strength had been weaponized against me. One evening, while unpacking old college boxes Naomi had stored, I found a small envelope tucked inside an album. The handwriting was unmistakable, Grandma Ruth's cursive. Across the front for both girls. I froze. Mom had told me years ago that Grandma's final letters were lost. My hands trembled as I unfolded the note. It detailed her wish that her trust fund be divided equally between her granddaughters to support their independence. Independence. I laughed bitterly. Mine had been used to justify neglect. That discovery changed everything. The next morning, I requested a copy of the family trust documents. The lawyer hesitated but eventually confirmed it. My name had been quietly removed as a beneficiary 2 years after Grandma's death, replaced by a note, funds allocated to Kayla Grant for business expansion with parental approval. My father's signature sealed it. That night, I sat at my tiny kitchen table, the city humming below. Outside, headlights streaked across the window like silent comets. Inside, I stared at the letter until the ink blurred. I wasn't just invisible anymore. I'd been erased. I didn't know it yet, but that letter was the first crack in the facade my family had built, and I intended to widen it until the whole thing collapsed. It started small, the way all storms do, just a shift in pressure, a whisper that something's coming. The week after finding Grandma Ruth's letter, I emailed the family attorney again, asking for a full audit of the trust activity. 2 days later, Dad called. His tone was casual, practiced. "Sweetheart, there's no need to dig into old paperwork. Your mother and I handled everything." I could hear the hum of his office heater behind him, the same low whine I'd grown up with. "Handled," I repeated. By removing my name, there was a pause. Then the click of ice in his glass. "You were busy building your career. Kayla needed a little help. You don't need the money anyway." It wasn't anger that hit me, it was the chill. That cold certainty that my worth had been weighed and traded, all under the label of logic. I hung up before he could finish his speech about family priorities. 2 hours later, Mom left a voicemail. Her voice trembled just enough to sound fragile. "Avery, honey, I'm not feeling well. My blood pressure's been so high since you started all this. Can't we just talk?" Manipulation disguised as concern, the Grant's favorite art form. The next few weeks turned into a silent siege. I'd wake to 20 missed calls, my phone vibrating across the nightstand like a trapped bee. Then came the messages from relatives. "You're overreacting," Uncle Malcolm said. "Families share resources. You're single, no kids." Aunt Lorna texted, "Don't let money ruin love." But it wasn't money, it was erasure. At work, I poured the fury into steel and glass. The Richardson Tower design became my obsession, each line a declaration that I could build something that wouldn't collapse under pressure. Daniel Reyes, the environmental engineer on the project, noticed. "You draw like you're fighting someone," he said one afternoon, leaning over my desk. "Maybe I am," I replied. He grinned softly. "Then make sure you win." It should have ended their quiet resistance, dignity intact. But my family never liked quiet. They preferred spectacle. One morning, as I stepped into the office lobby, I froze. Kayla sat at the reception desk, bright lipstick, fake smile. Avery, she chirped loud enough for the receptionist to look up. Surprise, I pulled her aside before the whispers started. What the hell are you doing here? Dad said I should check on you. You haven't answered anyone's calls. She pouted, voice pitched for sympathy. We're worried. You mean you're here to manage the PR fallout? Her eyes flickered. You sound paranoid. No, I said quietly. Experienced. I told security to escort her out. She left in tears, or maybe just the appearance of them. That night her Instagram post went live. Some people change when money's involved. Pray for them. Over 1,000 likes. The next morning Mr. Caldwell called me in. Personal drama showing up online, he said gently. Keep it outside the office. Yeah, I nodded, swallowing humiliation that burned like acid. That evening Naomi found me sitting on the floor of my apartment, blueprints spread around like battle maps. They're baiting you, she said, pouring me wine. I know, I muttered. But I can't just walk away. Then don't, she said. But fight clean. Data, not emotion. So, I did. I spent nights combing through digital archives, emails, financial records. The deeper I dug, the more rot I found. My name had been used as an authorized user on one of Dad's credit accounts. Not for spending, just to boost his credit limit. My credit score had become their tool. That was the night I stopped crying. I wasn't the weak link anymore. I was the quiet engineer who'd finally found the fault line. And I was ready to make it split wide open. The next blow came wrapped in concern. A text from Mom blinked on my phone. Your father's not sleeping. He says you're trying to destroy the family. Please stop before you regret it. Regret. That word always carried weight in our house. It was a leash disguised as love. I stared at the message for a long time before deleting it. Then I forwarded everything I'd found to my lawyer and scheduled an appointment with Dr. Cho. In her office, the lemon-scented air felt cleaner than anything I'd breathed in weeks. You're shaking, she noted. I don't know if I'm angry or just tired, I said. Both, she replied. That's what healing sounds like when it starts. That night, I dreamed of my father standing on the half-built Richardson Tower shouting orders that made no sense. The structure groaned unsteady. I woke up drenched in sweat, realizing my subconscious had already drawn the blueprint of my life. I'd been building on someone else's foundation, one crack away from collapse. The next morning, a certified letter arrived, Dad's handwriting across the envelope. Return the Toyota, or I'll report it stolen. I almost laughed. That car was legally mine, title and all. Still, the symbolism wasn't lost on me. They were willing to criminalize me just to maintain control. Naomi found me pacing the kitchen, holding the letter like evidence from a crime scene. You know what this means, she asked. Yeah, I said. They're scared. I blocked their numbers that night. The silence that followed wasn't peace, it was withdrawal. I'd spent my whole life addicted to their approval, and quitting cold turkey hurt like hell. I filled the void with pottery classes on Saturday mornings. Maeve, the instructor, was a woman in her 60s with silver hair and the calm authority of someone who's seen everything. Don't force the clay, she told me, guiding my hands. Listen to what it wants to become. I laughed. What if it doesn't know? Then you teach it gently, she said. Like you're reteaching yourself. Somewhere between the spinning wheel and the smell of wet earth, I realized I was shaping more than clay. I was shaping patience. But peace never lasts when control is slipping. One humid July evening, Naomi burst into my apartment holding her phone. You need to see this. It was Kayla again. A video post this time. Her eyes red, voice trembling. Please pray for my sister. She's struggling mentally. We're all so worried. The comments poured sympathy for her. You're such a good sibling. Mental health is hard. Sending love. I watched the video 3 times, the bitterness burning deeper with each view. Struggling mentally, I repeated aloud. They're rewriting the story before I even tell it. Dr. Cho's voice echoed in my memory. When people lose control over you, they try to control your narrative. Fine. I thought. Let's rewrite it myself. That night I started documenting everything: screenshots, emails, voicemails, financial records. I organized them in folders labeled truth. The engineer in me needed precision. The daughter in me needed justice. Then came the invitation that changed everything. My cousin Harper was getting married at Alder Manor in late August. The family would all be there. The perfect setting for one last conversation. The email came from Mom. We want to talk before the ceremony. It's time to put this ugliness behind us. Naomi read the message over my shoulder. You know this isn't about peace, right? I know, I said. It's about control. She tilted her head. Then why go? Because, I said, staring at the screen. It's the first time they've asked me to come to them. That night, I opened the box that once held Grandma Ruth's letter. Beneath the envelope was the piggy bank I'd kept since Christmas, still filled with the $2 bills I'd been adding every week since leaving. When I lifted it, something rattled inside, something small and metallic. I didn't know what it was yet, but the sound gave me chills. I placed the pig on my windowsill, looking out at the lights of San Francisco. The Bay Bridge shimmered like a promise. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was calculating. And for the first time in my life, the balance was finally shifting in my favor. The Alder Manor Library smelled of old paper and expensive regret. The carved beams above us were heavy with dust, the air dense, with silence that felt rehearsed. A clock ticked somewhere behind me, steady, accusatory. My parents sat across from me, each flanked by half-empty glasses of bourbon. Kayla stood near the window, wringing her hands like a child caught cheating. The light from the stained glass cut across her face in fractured colors, saint and sinner in one frame. Dad started first. "Avery," he said, voice calm like he'd practiced it in front of a mirror. "We didn't bring you here to fight. We're family." "Family," I repeated. "That's a word you like to use when you want obedience." Mom flinched. "Sweetheart, please. You're making this harder than it needs to be." "You took my name off Grandma Ruth's trust," I said. My voice didn't shake. It sliced. "You used it to fund Kayla's business. You even used my credit to boost Dad's account. And when I left, you called me unstable. You called me dangerous." Dad's jaw twitched. "You're exaggerating. We made practical decisions. Without my consent, I cut in. You turned my independence into justification for theft." Kayla's mascara smudged as she finally spoke. "I didn't know. I swear. Dad said it was a family loan." I reached into my bag and pulled out the binder I'd assembled, neatly tabbed, color-coded. I slid it across the table. "Loan documents don't usually involve forged authorizations." Mom's breath hitched. "Where did you get this?" "Grandma's lawyer kept copies," I said. "Turns out the letter she wrote for both girls wasn't lost. Naomi found it in my college boxes." For a moment, nobody spoke. The only sound was the clock ticking closer to the ceremony upstairs. Dad leaned back his chair, groaning. "You don't understand what it's like raising two daughters. One strong, one fragile. We had to make choices." "Yeah," I said softly. "You chose her." He slammed his hand on the table, the bourbon sloshing over the rim. "She needed help. And I needed parents." I snapped. The words rang against the oak walls sharper than I expected. "But you were too busy building her safety net out of my backbone." The silence that followed was surgical, clean, deep, no chance to close the wound. I reached for my final piece. From my bag came the piggy bank. The same one from that Christmas morning, now heavy and worn. I set it on the table and twisted the rubber stopper. Dozens of crisp $2 bills spilled across the wood, fluttering like green confetti. "For every week since I left," I said. 52 reminders of what I was worth to you. $2. Kayla began to cry, real tears, this time small and ugly. "I messed up," she whispered. "I let him fix my DUI. I let him buy silence with your inheritance. I thought he was protecting me." Mom covered her mouth. Dad turned away, shoulders rigid. "This isn't about revenge," I said quietly. "It's about balance. I'll consider reconciliation if you agree to two things: family therapy with Dr. Cho and correction of the trust per Grandma's letter. No more secrecy. No more emotional blackmail." Dad opened his mouth, but Mom touched his arm. "We'll do it," she said. Her voice was thin, almost translucent. "Whatever it takes." I gathered the binder and the piggy bank, but left the bills on the table. "Keep them," I said. A reminder of the cost of favoritism. As I turned toward the door, Kayla's voice stopped me. "You're different now." I looked back. "No," I said. "I'm just finally myself." The library door closed behind me with a sound like final judgment. Upstairs, a string quartet began to play. Somewhere the family I'd been born into was cracking quietly, inevitably under the weight of its own design. After the wedding, I didn't stay for the family photos. I walked straight to the parking lot, heels clicking on marble like a metronome, counting down to freedom. The air outside was sharp with the smell of rain and roses. Naomi waited by the car, leaning against the hood, with that look that said, "Well, they agreed." I told her. My voice sounded distant, like someone else was speaking. "Therapy. And to fix the trust." Naomi raised an eyebrow. "You believe them, I believe in documentation," I said, sliding the binder into my briefcase. We drove back to San Francisco in silence, the road slick and glinting under the moonlight. Somewhere past the Oregon border, I reached for the piggy bank in my bag. It was lighter now, emptier, but as I tilted it, something small and metallic clinked inside. A key. Thin, old, almost ornamental. When I got home, I set it on my desk beside Grandma Ruth's letter. The edges of the paper glowed under the desk lamp, the ink still elegant after all these years. A thought crept in, slow and thrilling. If they'd lied about the letter, what else had they buried? The next morning, Naomi stopped by with coffee. I showed her the key. Could be safety deposit, she guessed. Or a safe, I said. Grandma used to keep one in her attic. Dad claimed it was empty. We looked at each other, the same spark of curiosity lighting between us. What will you do? She asked. I turned the key in my palm, feeling its weight. Find the rest of the story, I said. Outside my window, the bay shimmered in the early light, endless and alive. For the first time in years, the future didn't feel heavy, it felt wide open. They thought they'd closed the book on me, but all they'd done was hand me the key to the next chapter.